Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the afternoon session of Arizona Gives Day, the Wilcox edition. Arizona Gives Day is a statewide effort to bring attention to nonprofits around the state. Well, here in Wilcox, you know, the theater is a nonprofit organization, and so we're doing a little telethon from 4 o'clock right now until about 5:30 tonight, just to remind you about Arizona Gives Days and the things that you can do to help support the efforts, and a chance to educate you a little bit about all the different things that the theater does. How can we give money to help support this cause? Well, there's several ways that we can do this. You can call in, and that phone number is 520-766-3340. And we've got a phone bank of a couple of volunteers over here. Hopefully the phone will ring here in just a little bit, and then you can make a donation over the phone. Or many people have said, let's do this online, so you can go to the website for the Wilcox Theater and Arts, and that's where you can find the link and you can donate online. And maybe the most exciting one is if you just walk in, come on down here to the theater on Railroad Avenue. When people come in, and it creates a really nice buzz for what's going on down here. I'll give you some updates. We started this morning and had some good success early on. Our totals right now are at $2,500. So we think we're doing well. We'd still like to beat what we did last year, which was $3,800. So we've got a little bit of work to do. And we have a lot of people that said they'll either come by or they'll donate online. So we expect later in the afternoon is when there'll be a little more of a rush of money coming in. This is Wilcox Theater and Arts, or WTA. Obviously, our bread and butter is the movie business. We're in the movie business to show the movies. Currently, we have two of them, which is, I think, Ghostbusters and then Godzilla versus King Kong. Yikes. Sorry, that was some editorial comments there. But besides movies, we've kind of counted up and we have about 36 other things that we do with the Wilcox under the banner of Wilcox Theater and Arts. So 36 things are lots of different activities. A few of them are like the film festival, which is actually coming up this weekend. That's run by volunteers. Volunteers is what helps make this whole organization go. We have volunteers. If you come and buy a ticket and go to the movies, selling you the popcorn, taking you the tickets, many of those young kids are volunteers to start with. And then after a year of that, then they're able to be put onto the payroll. We have our WHAM program, which is one of our major summer events. And WHAM is Wilcox Arts, Movies and Music. And that is June 1st. Earlier in this morning, we talked about how the WHAM Festival is really popular with the ranchers because every year that we do the WHAM, it seems like it rains, and the ranchers like the rain. We have art programs for all kinds of ages of kids, from the youngest clear up to the oldest. We have some people walking in today. Oh, would you like to have a few words with us? No, they said they would not. Anyway, and then we have Makerspace. We have live on stage, so we bring in celebrities and they come in and they do a performance. Right now, we're doing them in our little mini theater in the Palace Saloon. If you've never been there, it's actually quite a nice little experience, but we are going to build us a new facility to be able to host bigger events and bigger bands and that kind of stuff. There's a jam session. If you're an artist and like to play guitar or violin or a banjo, you know, a couple of times a month, these people get together and they just sit around and jam. I'm telling you, it's going on right now. I've had some feedback from people that attended and liked what they heard. So if you want to come down and just sit and listen to some good music, it's going on right now from 3 o'clock till 5 o'clock in the Palace. So we're the Wilcox Theater and Arts. I like the little saying that we have. This is a historic theater with modern experiences. So it is really a positive experience to come to the theater now. The chairs are nice. There's no holes in them. The springs are not coming up through them. If those of us who have born and raised here and come to the theater experience before, sometimes when it rained, it dripped on you, so you needed to know which seat to sit in or where you wanted to move. And those days are gone. We have first-class equipment, first-class sound. Come on down and join us.
More than just a theater. We are Wilcox Theater and Arts, the creative hub of Southeast Arizona. Our three-building complex is where arts, entertainment, and education come together. If you're looking for something fun to do, or if you need creative work done, or if you're just curious about the inside, stop by and see us on Railroad Avenue. Plus, we got a really cool sink.
Wilcox Theater and Arts provides equipment and education to students and adults. Here at WTA, we promote creativity in the areas of science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, STEAM for short. In the Studio 128 Makerspace, community members are welcome to come in for open house on Tuesdays, open lab on Thursdays, and Smart Maker on select Fridays. Visitors may use our computer lab, 3D printers, laser burner, robotics tools, and other technology for their creations.
Hi, my name is Luke, and I'm from Wilcox Middle School.
I'm Aaliyah.
Hi, I'm Chloe Finley.
I'm Paola.
Hi, I'm TJ from Wilcox Middle School, and my question for the science teachers is,
What do you think connects science and art?
Hi, I'm Rebecca Busby. I'm the 7th grade science teacher at Wilcox Middle School. We as human beings are meant to express ourselves artistically in one way or the other. I think art is a great form to relax, and all work and no play is no fun. So I think while we're doing science and technology stuff, projecting that in art, in a form of art, is fantastic.
No, sorry, just kidding. My name's Ty White. I'm a high school science teacher at Wilcox High School. So, science is a way of learning to understand the world around us. And as a teacher, we struggle to help kids understand and communicate that in effective ways because, let's face it, language is difficult. Those of us who like science have always usually feel that struggle with language and art. If art is a more conducive way for other people to express what they understand, or to show what they're curious about, or to envision a brighter future, then it creates an overlap where the two can coexist and create a more meaningful opportunity for a wider audience.
What do you hope people will learn in Studio 128?
One of the things I really hope that people learn here is that science, technology, math, all that stuff is not exclusive as its own field, that it converges with other areas. I really like the idea that we can use art along with the technology as a way for kids to learn to express what they understand, what they enjoy doing, and to be more involved in different activities.
I'm hoping that my students get an exposure to STEM, every field of it, and just imagine at the age of 12 and 13, if they have this exposure to STEM, they will make amazing professionals when they grow up, and I hope to see great professionals rise out of Wilcox.
Why are you a science teacher?
Well, growing up, I had quite a few role models in front of me, and especially one of my college professors. And I love the way he gave an open space to ask questions, be curious, and it was a very non-threatening environment, and I loved his classroom. So looking at him, I wanted to be like him someday. So Professor Mistry, this is for you.
Actually, I can see that you guys are onto me. I'm actually a space traveler from the year 3027, where I excel in art and theater. But I recognize the importance to teach science, and so I'm trying to become a science teacher.
Besides OpenLab and SmartMaker, Wilcox Theater and Arts offers a variety of other programming blending art, technology, and STEAM topics. WTA offers Kids' Art Club, paint nights, and arts and crafts-based classes. With Jam Session, Creative Youth Productions, Open Mic Night, and Live on Stage, WTA promotes culture and music in the Wilcox area. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed this tour of Wilcox Theater and Arts. For more information, visit our website at wilcoxtheater.com.
Welcome everybody to this week's movie review. Me and Theodore review the latest movie coming to the theater. This week we have Kung Fu Panda 4. To start, Theodore, would you like to talk about the movie? I couldn't have said it better myself. I personally enjoyed the movie. I liked it better than the last one. I wasn't a big fan of it. This one was a good redemption movie for it. It has really good fight scenes. It's a good family-friendly movie. Jack Black, again, does once again a great job of playing Poe. And I hope you guys come and watch the movie at the theater.
Or in an attempt to create some sort of shading. Hey guys, it's Josh again with Wilcox Theater and Arts, and today I'd like to teach you guys how to use line to create form when drawing from observation. So line is a very basic way to map out a drawing, as I like to call it. And we'll look at, through a demonstration I'll give you, how to use contour and cross-contour lines to identify form. And so with that information, we'll go ahead and get started. Don't worry about just sitting down at your desk and replicating to the best of your ability what I'm doing. This is a little extravagant for something as simple as doing a contour drawing, as you'll find out pretty soon. But with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So essentially, a contour drawing is just, again, using that knowledge of lines to show form. And so usually that starts with a little bit of an outline. And I mentioned it last time, but I like to call that, mapping your drawing. If you don't have a solid foundation in anything you do, anything you're going to add to it is going to be rather, lame. So it's really important to learn how to correctly understand form before you go in and you add detail to things. So you may have to bear with me for a little bit and probably speed this part up while I get the outline on before I tell you guys anything else. So, don't be afraid in things like this to use your eraser. I've already made the mistake of making this teapot a little too short and stout, as it were. And for those of you who are using an easel for the first time, if it's extremely uncomfortable for you, you're definitely not alone. When I started using an easel, it was rather uncomfortable for me as well. But when you get over that discomfort and become comfortable drawing on an easel, you sacrifice discomfort for a lot of mobility and a lot of control and a lot of movement in your drawing that you don't have it. Right. Remember, you can always take a step back and try and gauge everything that's going on. And I'll point out here another useful tip when drawing from observation, to try and get an accurate rendition of the reality that you're perceiving. Oftentimes it's important to gauge proportions with a measuring stick of some sort. A pencil works just fine. And I'm sure in like movies or cartoons, you've seen, say, an artist standing out behind his easel and putting his thumb out and looking at what he's drawing. Well, in actual art, that is a thing. You can look at and measure with whatever it is you're measuring, the measurement of whatever it is you're trying to replicate. You can measure it on your pencil, for instance, and take a step back and see what that means on your canvas, what that relates to. And as long as you're measuring it from the same point every time on the same instrument, you can get things down very accurately. Now, that's not something I tend to use very often to the fault of my own, but it is a thing. Okay, so I've got a rough outline of my teapot. It's definitely not perfect, but for the sake of this demonstration, I'm satisfied with it. And so now what we're going to do, and this is really the important part in trying to build up your practice of seeing form in objects. And so this is where the cross contour comes in. And that's where we go in with these lines here. And we define shape by the way we bend them. You see how this teapot bends up, and so we'll map it up. These lines will curve up, and then down here, how it curves outwards, we'll curve these lines outwards a little bit. And you can add even another segment of line, or another direction, that shows that even more defined, that this item comes up like so. And I'm not sure if you could see that, but essentially that's what I'm getting at, that map there that really gives the grid of that object, and it defines for us very well what this shape is actually made of, and how it works, and how we really see it. And that's that. This bows out like so. Got a couple lines down here to show that it's bowing out like so. And again, I'll just go ahead and finish this for you, but that's really the concept that we're getting here with this cross contour drawing is what it's called. And again, I would strongly encourage that you practice this with quite a few items until you get very confident with your ability to identify the way that these objects curve and bend and bow. Perhaps starting with something as simple as a sphere, and gradually working your way to more and more complex items. And this again is very important, because this is going to be a foundation for the way that you add your detail and you create realistic looking items from reality. And also, when you're drawing, the closeness of these lines can really help. How do I say it? Help identify just how steep a slope is. For example, this slope on this little leg here is relatively steep. So I'm going to draw a good amount of line in through here to try and express that this is a steep curve from that highlight there down to where it kind of evens out. And of course, on any of these videos, I'll finish the drawing I'm working on, but as soon as you feel that you have your concept down and that you've learned what you came to learn, turn the video off. Go ahead and practice for yourself. That's what's really important. You could go on YouTube and find, a very short explanation of what I'm doing here that tells you the same thing I'm telling you right now. But when it comes down to it, you're only going to learn these principles through your own practice. And I definitely know that that's true. I am by no means very good at this stuff yet. I took a single Art 101 class on observational drawing, and we met for 6 hours a week, and I practiced. That's essentially all we did. But that's how you learn this. Now see, here's one of those instances where I may almost prefer sitting at a desk because I could just turn the paper to get these awkward movements. So for you drawing at a desk, I guess you win this round. Those of you who are interested in actually drawing with an easel or in any of the arts, using any of the art supplies that I mentioned in our last video, you can find it basically anywhere. I mean, Amazon. Just go to Amazon, you can punch in the word easel. You can find this specific one I'm using is a very cheap one. You can get for about $45 to $50. One of these really cheap aluminum ones, all the way to really nice, very expensive ones. But you can really find these anywhere. Just punch in easel or go to a hobby arts shop. Might have them locally in your community. Or I would just suggest online because it's convenient. But, I can even leave the exact names just in case you forgot of the equipment I'm using, so that you can take those names and punch them in and find these things for yourself. But I think we're done for today. Very sketchy, very quick contour line drawing of a teapot. But if you look at it, I think I can with confidence say that you can tell a little bit more about the form of this teapot than when it was simply an outline. And doing this over and over again will make it easier for you to really perceive how form works and how to replicate that. And you can take that skill with you as you continue to learn how to add value, shading, and make a work of art. So thanks for watching, you guys. I hope you enjoyed the video and keep with us. Bye.
Hi, I'm Gail Berry, Director of Wilcox Theater and Arts. I'd like to show you what we do in Studio 128. Come on in.
Wilcox Theater and Arts is the primary source of extracurricular arts education and involvement for Wilcox and smaller outlying communities. We provide a wide variety of programming and education for youth and families, including the Creative Youth League, an out-of-school Friday program providing an outlet for students to express their creative interests in digital media, physical art, and the like. Our Smart Maker Labs, a monthly program which enables kids to pick up a screwdriver and get involved with STEAM activities such as robotics and coding. We host a variety of year-round programs and summer activities involving drama, art, music, video production, and more. Some of our family offerings include the annual WAM Festival, a one-day outdoor family-friendly event celebrating art, music, and movies through fun activities for families to enjoy. We offer occasional arts and crafts classes, workshops, and paint nights as well. We also like to showcase our community's talent through open mic nights, jam sessions, exhibits, as well as live on-stage performances of local and outside talent for our community's entertainment.
Thanks for coming to visit. Our arts education programs here provide opportunities for kids and families that they wouldn't otherwise have. Come and see us again soon.
Are you wondering what to do with all that excess construction paper? I have the project for you. Today we are going to be doing a torn paper collage. The first thing you're going to do is have your picture. I drew a pretty little flower. It's easy for me to show you what to do. Next, you're going to take all your construction paper and you're going to tear it to pieces. Now, once you have all of your paper torn and separated, the next step is to take your glue, which I am using a glue stick. It won't last very long, but you can always use a product called Glue Wall if you want it to stay longer. And for paper, you can always use scrapbook paper to add a little dimension, magazines, anything you have around the house to make a really cool looking picture. The first thing I'm going to do is start with a background. I'm going to do blue for the sky, and I'm just going to put glue down and then my construction paper. Now that I have my background filled in, I'm going to start on my stem at the bottom. And it's okay to cover some of the pieces of paper that are already on the paper. Could be a fun little project to do with the kids at home. It's kind of like putting together a puzzle. Okay, now that I have my stem filled in, I'm going to do the petals. So we're building it from the background up so that when we overlap, it looks solid. Okay, so the final part, we're going to add in the center of the flower, and I'm going to be using yellow for that. Here's the final product. It's really abstract. It can be a lot of fun. You can use different kinds of papers like scrapbook paper, magazines, anything that you can find. The more colors adds more texture and you'd want to use a hard surface, thicker paper, cardboard, anything that'll hold the glue well. You can do this at home with your kids or for yourself. Anyone who wants to try it, give it a try.
And there you go. You've got a still life. Hey guys, it's Josh with Wilcox Theater and Arts with another video on how to draw from observation. Today we were setting up our still life for some principles I wanted to teach you, and I thought I might as well do a real short segment on some things to consider when setting up your own still lifes to draw from observation. Here I have some things just around the studio, but as I set up I'm going to show you some things you can use to maybe replace or use from home. So I use an easel, and usually I want to draw from about eye level, so I have a little box here to set up on my table just to elevate my item, which is our teapot again. So this is just a little box. You can use any sort of box. Got a little table here, fold-up table. You can even use like your kitchen table or just whatever surface. Usually it's good to have a cloth under whatever you're drawing. Usually the darker the color, the better, because it helps create a contrast between the ground to the object that you're drawing. It can be really fun for shadows and whatnot. This is we're fortunate enough to have this random black cloth here in our studio, but even if you have something like a thin blanket, that's a darker color that you want to throw on top of whatever you're drawing, that would be great as well. And for this specific setup, I'm going to put a little paperweight here on the corner. You're not going to see it in the actual video, partially because I'm going to cover it real quick. But I like drawing cloth, and that can give a pretty fun effect. So now we have our composition here. We have our item elevated to where I want it to be. Have some fun things to actually draw and to get a fulfilling experience out of. And the last thing I want to talk about is the lighting. We already have the lighting set up. Sorry, we cheated. But usually you want pretty dramatic lighting on whatever you're drawing. One, because it's easier to draw something if you have a single light source, maybe two, on what you're drawing. And to do that from home, it can be a little complicated, but even if you have like a little desk lamp and you're drawing something small, just turn off the lights or try and have a dimmer lighting in the room that you're drawing from, and maybe set the lamp off to one side. And there you go. You've got a still life.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We're ready for our 4:30 edition of the live portion of our little telethon here. This is Arizona Gives Day, April 2, which tries to bring attention to all the nonprofits around the state of Arizona. But we're more interested in what's going on here in Wilcox. And so the nonprofit of choice today that we're promoting is the Wilcox Theater and Arts, WTA, down here on Railroad Avenue. Not that we've been here for a while, but my understanding is the theater opened in 1918. There are not too many people left around here that were here when it opened in 1918, but it pretty much ran continuously until 2011. That's a long time to be showing movies in a little town, starting in 1918. And then I think you probably remember in 2011 to somewhere in 2012 it was closed, and that's when the new organization came and took over the theater and has been running it ever since. And so, gosh, we're now to 2024, and we're just getting better, I think, all the time. Just so you remember, the experience for our movies here in town is quite nice. We have a top-notch sound system. We have good seats, and we have current and good movies that are coming out, at least as good as the studios will put out for us. You know, right now we're having Godzilla and King Kong are playing games, and then also Ghostbusters is here. So those are the movies that are coming around. This is a telethon. We are trying to raise some money. I'll give you the totals now is that we're a little over $2,500. So we're slowly creeping up to our goal. Long-term goal was about $10,000. Last year we raised about $3,800. So we're creeping up on those goals right there. How can you give? Several ways. Well, the most fun way is if you just drive up here, jump out on Railroad Avenue, come into the theater, and we can take a donation right here. We can take a check, we take cash, we take credit cards, and actually we've done all three of those here today. Or if you want to just do it online, go to the website at WTA or the Wilcox Historic Theater, and you'll find us there. You can make a donation. Or what's the other one? You can call in if you want to also. You don't have to come down, don't have to go online. Just 766-3340. So it's 520-766-3340. You know, everybody's got great causes and great events and stuff. The interesting part about the theater is we serve a wide range of customers and people that come in and partake of all the different things that are going on. You know, we do show movies, and that's our bread and butter, but we have about 36 other things that take place under the auspices of the WTA, and that really reaches out and touches a lot of people. A year ago, we tried to go back and count how many people do we actually partake of some of the activities and events that the WTA puts together. And we came up with a little over 15,000 people that came through the doors in one way or another. Some came to movies, some came to paint night, some did the art stuff, some came to live performances, some did them all. But it's a wide variety of people that are doing things, and I think it's just important. You know, when you support this organization, you're supporting a wide group of people in our community. 15,000 people came through and partake. That's a pretty good number for us to have when you stop and think about it, that we have a population of Wilcox of 3,500. We have a trade area of Wilcox somewhere around 15 to 18,000. So that means almost potentially every person that lives in this area has been touched by the theater one time or another during this past year. So it's a good place to put some of your money. It's a good place to help things moving forward. You know, one of the things we are doing here is we are going to build a new building out behind the current Studio 128 and the Palace. And what's going to happen is we're going to create a third screen, and then we'll also make that into a theater so we can have a community theater at the same time. Right now we have a lot of stuff that's live on stage, and we have to hold that in the Palace, in our little mini theater in the Palace. And all of that stuff will go out into the new theater, the new building. Well, what will happen there is that we'll have a bigger stage so we can have bigger acts. Right now, we really can't have a band. But lots of stuff going on. Come on down. Support the WTA the best you can. Any amount is appreciated.
So, now that school is over for the year, you probably have a lot more free time on your hands. Why not get into some simple game design? Let's get in. We're going to be using a free web-based software called MakeCode Arcade. You can find it at arcade.makecode.com. MakeCode Arcade is a simple game engine that allows you to create games by using blocks for beginners or JavaScript for more advanced users. It is easy to learn and can be fun to master. The website features mini guides, video tutorials, examples, community mini-games, and advertises dedicated hardware that can be used to play or create your games on the go. Let's start by creating a new project. Now we're at the main workspace. For this project, we're going to be making a vertical shooter similar to games like Galaga and Space Invaders. We'll start by making our background scene. So go into Scene, set background image to, and click and drag it into our OnStart block. Next, click on this square and we'll start designing our background. I'm going to cheat by going into the gallery and choosing a pre-made background to save some time. I'm also going to change some of the colors to turn it more into a night scene because I like that. Alright, after making some adjustments, I'm going to go to the bottom right corner and press done. And in our simulator, our background has been set. Next, we need to set up our player. So go into Sprites, The very first option, set my sprite to sprite blank of kind player. Click and drag that into onStart, and notice that nothing showed up yet because we need to design our player now. So click on that square. I'm actually going to go into the bottom left corner and adjust the size of the canvas so that the player won't be really big. I think 9 by 9 is better for me. I never would have thought Microsoft Paint skills would be useful. Alright, now that I have my player sprite made, I'm going to the bottom right and pressing done again, and our sprite is now positioned in this very center of the screen. Now, I don't want that to happen, so I'm going to go into sprites, set my sprite position to, click and drag that into onStart. I'm going to change X to 80 to be in the center, and Y to, let's say, 110 to be at the bottom. That looks more like it. Next, we need to make the sprite move when we press left and right. There are a few different ways of doing this, but the best way that I found for this project is to go into Logic and grab an if and then statement block. Notice that it's faded out right now. That's because it needs to be attached to something in order to function correctly. So I'm going to go into Game, on Game Update, which is going to be any time that the game updates itself, and I'm going to drag it into there, and now it's able to function properly. This is how it's going to work. Go into Controller, is A button pressed, and drag this into where it says True. So now this is saying if the A button is pressed, then anything that's below it will happen. What we want to happen is to have the sprite move to the left. Click on that A and change it to left. Now this is going to apply to whenever the left button is pressed. Go into Sprites, set my sprite velocity to Vx and Vy for velocity x and velocity y, and drag that into that if and then statement. So now, if the left button is pressed, then our sprite is going to go with a velocity of 50 for x and 50 for y, and what that looks like is... whoops. So these values are definitely wrong. If you think about this like a graph, x is horizontal and y is vertical. Since the origin point is going to be in the top left of our game, a positive y value will bring us down and a negative y will bring us up. A positive x will bring us to the right and a negative x will bring us to the left. With that in mind, I'm going to change the y velocity to 0 because we don't want to go up or down. And the x velocity needs to be a negative number to go to the left, so let's say negative 50. If we go over to our simulator and I press left, or A on the keyboard, now it's going to the left. And it's not stopping at the wall. So to stop our sprite from going beyond the view of our screen, go into Sprites, scroll down to where it says Set My Sprite Stay in Screen, click and drag that into OnStart, and change it from off to on. Now whenever we press left, it'll stop right there. Now we want it to also go to the right whenever we press right, so go to this plus on our if and then statement twice, and we'll have this other section to add another condition. I'll go ahead and click on this left one, copy and paste Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V, and I'll drag that into the other statement. And since this applies to right now, I'm going to change this to right. Now we're going to copy and paste the set my sprite velocity, drag it underneath the right statement, and change from negative 50 to 50. Now if we go back to our simulator, if we go to right, it's going to the right, left, right. Now we have another problem. I want it to stop moving whenever I stop pressing left and right, but it keeps going left and right even though I just tap it. To solve this, I'm going to again copy and paste the set my sprite velocity, click and drag it into the else statement that we have at the bottom now, and change the values of velocity x and y to 0. So what this entire statement is saying is if the left button is pressed, set my sprite's velocity to the left 50. If the right button is pressed, set my sprite's velocity to the right 50. And if left or right are not being pressed and nothing else is being pressed, set my sprite's velocity to 0, which will stop it. We can test this back at the simulator by pressing it and letting go, and it is doing exactly what I want it to do, stopping whenever I stop pressing anything. This movement speed is a little bit too slow for me, so I'm going to change it from negative 50 and 50 to negative 100 and 100. Yeah, that's much better. Next, I'm going to make the sprite shoot a projectile whenever I press the A button, or space on the keyboard. The simplest way to do that is to go into Controller, on A button pressed, and drag it onto our workspace. To add our projectile, we're going into Sprites, scroll down to set projectile to projectile from my sprite with velocity X and velocity Y. Click and drag that into A button pressed. Now we can click on this square and design our projectile. I'm going to change this size to 3 by 7. After designing your projectile, press done. Now when we press the A button, it's going to shoot a projectile, but it's shooting in the wrong direction. So let's fix that by going into our velocity values, changing X to 0 because we don't want it going side to side, and changing Y to a negative number since negative is upwards. Now our projectile is shooting upwards like it should be. That's pretty slow for me, so I'm going to double that to negative 200 instead. Much better. Now that we're able to shoot, we need something to shoot at, so let's make some enemies. First, let's go into game and add an on-game update to every block. Later, it'll become more clear why I chose this specific block to do this. Next, to go into sprites, add a set my sprite block again, put it into that block. I'm going to rename this my sprite 2 to alien. One other important thing to do is to change of kind player to on kind enemy. Now we can press this square and start designing our enemy. Now I have my enemy designed, I'm going to press done, and you'll notice that every 500 milliseconds it's going to spawn a new enemy directly in the center of the screen. Go into sprites again, grab a set my sprite position block and drag it underneath our set block. You'll notice that it accidentally set our sprite to the corner instead of the other sprite, so we need to change my sprite to alien. Now the alien is always going to spawn in the corner. I want my aliens to spawn on different positions on the sky. To do that, we're going to go into math, scroll down to pick random from 0 to 10, and drag that into our X value for position. Now I'm going to adjust these values from 20 to, let's say, 140. Now you'll notice that they're spawning on the top, cluttering up the sky in random positions. Next, I'm going to go into sprites, scroll down to set my enemy, follow my sprite, and drag that underneath the set position block. Now you'll notice that our game is not working anymore because my enemy is actually an invalid variable. It does not exist. We need to change that to alien. Now you'll notice that every 500 milliseconds, a new enemy is spawning and following the player at all times. I'm going to do one more thing to make their behavior a little bit more interesting. On that set follow block, click on this plus, and you can change the speed at which they are moving. I don't want all of them to be moving at the same exact speed, so I'm going into math and picking another pick a random block for the speed. Now I'm going to make their speed vary from 20 to, let's say, 70. Now you'll see that some of them are moving quickly and some of them are moving kind of slow. Now we have a few more things to do. Notice that anytime that I shoot the enemies, nothing is happening, and anytime that they touch me, nothing is happening still. They're also spawning at a very fast rate, so I'm going to change update every 500 milliseconds to every second, or 1000 milliseconds. Now we're going to add some collisions to make sure that something happens whenever two entities collide with each other. So go into sprites, scroll down to overlaps, and on sprite of kind player overlaps other sprite of kind player. We need to make some adjustments to this before we start. Sprite of kind player overlaps with other sprite of kind enemy. Now this is referring to any time that the enemies come into contact with our sprite. Again, go into sprites, scroll down to destroy my sprite, and now whenever an enemy touches us, our sprite disappears. So our sprite is gone and now the enemies have nothing to follow and the game can't continue. We need to do something about that. I'm going to go back to the on start block and copy and paste our set position block for our sprite. Now I'm going to drag that underneath our destroy sprite and our sprite should spawn back in after it's destroyed. Whoops. I guess it's a good idea to also set a new sprite anytime that we get destroyed, so I'm going to put that between the destroy and set position blocks. Now I'm going to move that, there we go. We get destroyed and then we spawn back in. The destruction's a little bit boring for me, so I'm going to press the plus next to the destroy my sprite block and add a fire effect for half a second. Now anytime that we get destroyed, we burn up and we spawn back in. Let's make it a little bit fancier. Go into scene, scroll down to where it says camera shake, and drag that underneath destroy to make sure that the camera shakes whenever we get touched. We seem to have another issue. Anytime that an enemy touches us for many frames, it repeats their destruction many times because the enemy is still there as we respawn. It creates a lot of fire and a lot of shakes, and the enemies that spawn while we're still being destroyed are confused because they have nothing to follow. To fix that, we're going to destroy the enemy that touches us whenever we get destroyed as well. So we're going to copy and paste the destroy block and put it underneath the other one. Now this part is important. Click and drag the other sprite and put it in place of my sprite. This will make sure that the actual sprite that touches us gets destroyed instead of any new sprite that is set as a new alien. Now when I get touched, I get destroyed and the alien that touches me gets destroyed. Now a new issue that we have is that nothing happens whenever we die. We just keep dying and respawning over and over again. We need to establish some health. Luckily, MakeCode Arcade has a pre-made life function. Let's take advantage of that by going to our OnStar block, go into Info, scroll down to Set Life 2, drag that into our OnStar block, and now we have 3 health whenever we start the game. You'll see that in the top left corner of the screen. Now, going back to our overlap block, we're going to go to Info, scroll down to change life by -1, and I put it underneath the block that destroys the enemy. Now, anytime that we get touched, we respawn and we lose 1 health. If we lose all of our hearts, it's game over. Our projectiles are still not working, so we need to set another overlap block that allows us to destroy enemies whenever we shoot them. So again, go into Sprites, go down to the On Sprite of Kind player overlaps, and drag that into the workspace. To set this up correctly, we need to change of kind player to of kind projectile, and this of kind player to enemy. So now this is applying to any time that our projectile touches the enemies. I'm going to copy and paste this destroy other sprite block that we have in the other overlap, because that's already going to apply to the enemy. Now if we fire at the enemies, they get destroyed, although our projectile shoots right through them, so I might want to fix that by destroying the projectile. So I'll copy and paste this destroy other sprite block, and I'm going to replace this other sprite with sprite since this is applying to the projectile as it says up here. And instead of destroying it with more fire, I'm just going to remove all effects for that. Now when we fire at enemies, our projectile also gets destroyed so it doesn't shoot through them. I'm noticing that these enemies are a little too easy to kill, so I'm going to change their speed. Now we're back at the on-game update every so-and-so milliseconds block. I'm going to change the speed from 20 to 70 to 50 and 100. It's still a little too easy, so I'm going to make them update every 750 milliseconds instead of every second. Lastly, we need to add a scoring system. So, going back to our OnStar block, we're going to go into Info, grab a Set Score To block, and put it as the last block in our OnStar block. Now you'll notice that in the top right, we have a score. However, you'll notice that the score is not changing whenever we destroy enemies. We're going to need to add one more thing to that overlap that destroys the enemies whenever their projectile touches them. Go into Info, grab a Change Score By block, and drag it underneath the Destroy Sprite block. You can make this any value that you want, so I'm going to change it to, let's say 10, because that's a classic value. Now, anytime that I shoot enemies, my score increases by 10, and I can say that my game is finally finished. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment. Keep following Studio 128 and Wilcox Theater for more content, and we'll see you next time.
thought about using bubbles in your art? Well, today I'm going to show you a way you can. First thing you're going to do is take your bubble mixture and put it into separate containers. Next, you're going to take food dye and add it into your bubble mixture. Next thing you're going to do is take your piece of paper and one of your colors, you're going to dip your bubble stick into it. And you're going to blow your bubbles straight on your paper. I'm going to change to another color. So this project is really messy. You might want to step outside to do it. And here is the final product. Just let it dry and you have this really awesome abstract art. It's great for the kids to do at home when they're bored and have nothing to do.
In my first video, I briefly mentioned that I recently got into 3D printing. It's been 2 months since I've owned my printer, and now I can say that I'm comfortable with sharing the basics of how it works. This is my intro to 3D printing. Let's get started. For the sake of simplicity, I'll only be covering the process behind using FDM printers in this video, which is the cheapest and most easily accessible type of 3D printer available to consumers. FDM printers use spools of different types of plastic filament which are melted through a print head using a heated nozzle. The head is controlled by a computer or computer-generated code to move around in specific paths layer by layer while plastic filament is flowing through it until a 3D model is fully made from the bottom to the top. From start to finish, printing an object is a 3-step process. First, a computer-generated 3D model of your object needs to be created. There are many types of software that can be used to do this, from free basic CAD software like Tinkercad to expensive professional software like SolidWorks and AutoCAD. You can check out my introduction to Tinkercad if you want to start getting into simple 3D design. Next, that finished model must be imported into a piece of software known as a slicer. The slicer takes the model and turns it into a complex series of code that basically cuts the model into individual layers and paths that a 3D printer is able to understand and execute. The code tells the head, go from this point to that point at this specific speed with this amount of filament being used, one line at a time. Specific printer models may have their own proprietary slicers, like FlashForge with their FlashPrint software, or a printer may be able to use multiple universal slicers like Cura or Simplify 3D. Finally, that sliced code needs to be sent to the 3D printer so it can get to work. Some printers are able to read the code from portable media like flash drives or SD cards. Others can be controlled directly from a computer either through a direct USB connection or wirelessly from a network. Once the code is sent to the printer, it's basically a press go and watch situation. The printer will simply do its thing, and if there are no complications, you'll have a finished model made without having to do anything else. 3D printing can be a fun and relatively easy way to create figurines, decorative pieces, functional objects, artwork, prototyping for personal projects, and lots more. It isn't always perfect, as things can go wrong sometimes, but it's a fun learning experience for those who want to start their journey into becoming a maker. Thanks for watching. Keep following Studio 128 and Wilcox Theater for more content.
Welcome to this week's movie review, where me and Theodore review the newest movie coming to the theater. This week we have The Beekeeper. The Beekeeper is the newest movie starring Jason Statham. Yeah, I personally enjoyed the movie. It was a really good movie, but it had strong language. If you don't like strong language, this might not be a movie, but if you enjoy action films, come and see it. Theodore, what did you think? I feel like you probably enjoyed it too. I personally rate this movie a 7.5 out of 10, just because of the strong language. But other than that, hope. Hope you guys come and see it. See you guys at the theater.
So, now that school is over.
Well, hello everybody. It's 5 o'clock. Do you know where your kids are? Yes. We are here live for Arizona Gives Day. Here's where across the state of Arizona, people pay attention and support their favorite nonprofits. Here in Wilcox, locally, we're doing this little telethon for Wilcox Theater and Arts to raise money to help them keep all of their programming up and running and everything. I've got a little list of things here. It seems like I always forget to say a few things. First of all, I'll talk to you a little bit about how you can give. I like the one that's the most fun is for people to come off the street and walk in and just make a donation here to the people here. We've had a few come in over since I last visited with you, and that's always fun to be able to talk to them. And then you can call in. The phone number is 520-766-3340. You can call in and then take a little donation right over the phone. The other one is if you can go online and then go to the website and you can make a donation right online. Hi, how are you? Come in and see these people right there. The other thing that I have kept forgetting over and over and over is that we have pizza, we have donuts, and we got popcorn. If you'd like to come in and you can have some pizza, donuts, and popcorn. That's quite a combination. I have some totals here that they handed to me. I'm going to break it down this time a little more. Total here is about $2,819. Interesting that online people have given $1,419. And then on-site, people walking in and writing a check or bringing some cash has been $400. And then we have our original $1,000 match. So as of at 5 o'clock, we have 27 different donors have given a total of $2,819. But I know that's going to change when we wrap up in about 30 minutes, as we have people here today, right now, writing a check to help support the activities at Wilcox Theater and Arts. You know, we do a lot of movies, and I've talked about what we have right now playing with King Kong and Godzilla and the Ghostbusters, but I want to take a minute. We have all kinds of other things going on in the movie theater. We have a program called Retro Rewind, where we come in and we play movies out of the olden days, where the movies that were made in the 1920s all the way up to the 1960s. You can come and watch those times of classics. We have a kids movie club. Did you know that we have a drive-in movie? Yes, over there in the old Hooker Field behind the Elks Lodge is drive-in screen has been put up, and we got the proper equipment that you can pull in there and tune in on your radio so you get a quality sound, and you can sit in your car, you can sit in the back of your truck, you can sit in chairs on the outside and watch a movie, a drive-in movie. And then we have a matinee My Way, which we basically leave the lights on, turn the music down a little bit or the sound down a little lower, and it's a place for the kids when they come to the movies. Maybe they have trouble keeping still. Summer programs are a big deal here. Wham! Festival's coming on June 1st. But other things that I have not talked about yet, one of the things we have is called a brown bag luncheon, a brown bag talks. That's put on by the Wilcox Historical Society. They bring in expert speakers, and they talk about everything from the history of the Arizona Highways magazine. They've talked about the history of the Muleshoe Ranch. They've talked about the history of the Arizona Rangers. It's just a program. If you go to the website, Wilcox Theater and Arts, you'll find a calendar of all these different events. Lots of kids things going on. Over the summer, we have a tech and engineering week that's coming up. We're going to send kids down to Fort Huachuca and some of the other local businesses around here to learn about engineering jobs here in the Wilcox area. Lots of programming for adults with the painting and art stuff. The Arizona Science Center is going to be coming down here. We have local classes right now in our matchmaker spaces, and it's like how to build a computer, how to build an arcade game, 3D printing. And as crazy as that sounds, this is where the future of job creation is going to be, And those are some skills that you can kind of begin to learn right now, right here in Wilcox, through the Wilcox Theater and Arts, through some of their STEM programs, science, technology, engineering, and math. So that way a young person can kind of figure out, is this a passion that I might have? I just didn't know it. Anyway, I'll end it for now. We're at $2,800, and I'll give you a final total in about 30 minutes. Remember, pizza, donuts, and popcorn.
Ah man, I just noticed that I've been sliding this thing around too much and now the bottom filter is a little busted. Shoot. In my last video I mentioned I'd be doing a full system build tutorial once I had all my parts in. Well, here we are. Let's get started. First I'm going to be making a quick general list of all the parts I'll be using for this build. We have our case, power supply, motherboard, CPU, GPU, RAM, and storage. First we're going to start off with the motherboard, which comes with the motherboard itself, the user manual, the rear I/O shield, and the driver disk. If you have any access to the internet, you're probably not going to want to use this driver disk since they usually come with outdated drivers by the time you receive them. And if you don't have internet, how are you watching this video? What I normally do for step 1 is install the RAM onto the motherboard while it's still outside of the case. Since this motherboard has 4 DIMM slots, I'm going to refer to the manual to see which ones are going to be occupied first for DIMM 1 and 2. And it looks like the first one will go here and the second one here. So to install it, first we need to open these little latches on both sides, or on one side depending on what motherboard you have. Keep in mind that the slots have this little notch to prevent you from putting in the RAM the wrong way, since there's a little hole right near the middle of every RAM stick. With that in mind, I'm just going to align it with the hole, press down until you hear a click on both sides. If you're a first-time builder, this will probably feel like a lot of force, but trust me, you're not going to damage the motherboard if you press down hard. One way to tell that they're fully installed is if you notice that all of the latches are fully aligned. Now that we have the RAM installed, we're going to move on to the CPU, or the processor. My specific processor is a PGA socket one, which means that all the pins are on the processor itself, and the holes are on the motherboard socket. If it was an LGA, the CPU would be flat, and all the pins would be on the motherboard socket instead. You're going to want to be very careful with the PGA CPU, because if you bend any of the pins, it's not going to make full contact with the motherboard socket, and thus it won't work. So I would recommend that you only hold the edges of the CPU and try not to purposefully touch any of the pins at all. I'm going to set that down for now since I'm only working with one hand. I'm going to open the latch on the socket so that's ready for us to put it in. You'll notice that on the CPU there is a little triangle in one of the corners, and this will let us align it in the right orientation on the socket. On our socket, that same triangle is right here in this corner. So while aligning those corners, I'm going to seat it into the socket until it drops into place. I'm not going to push it down, it'll just fall in like that. Now put the latch down, secure it, and our CPU is now installed. Next we need to install our CPU cooler on top of our processor, but in this situation my cooler uses a different mounting mechanism than what's currently pre-installed on the motherboard, so I'm going to need to unscrew these brackets here so that I can actually use my cooler. You are going to need a Phillips head screwdriver for this and for a lot of things during this build, so make sure you have one. Basically every cooler that comes with your processor will have this really thin layer of thermal paste already applied onto the heatsink, but I'm not going to be using this. I will clean it off and apply my own thermal paste that I like to use, and then I'm going to install the cooler. To do that, first I'm going to be using a dry napkin to get rid of most of the paste. Next I'm going to be using a wet napkin that's covered in rubbing alcohol to get rid of the rest of it. And finally I'm going to rub it down again with a dry napkin, just because. Keep in mind that I'm only doing this because I like to use aftermarket thermal paste on all my builds. You can use the pre-applied thermal paste that was on the cooler and it'll work just fine. Alright, so here's my tube of aftermarket paste that I'll be using. I'm going to be applying a small little circle of paste in the center that's roughly the size as one of these capacitors right here. That looks like a pretty good amount to me. Now I'm going to take my cooler with the Shroud logo facing the left side so that it doesn't interfere with my RAM slots. I'm going to align my screws with the mounts as carefully as I can, and then just place it on there. This mounting mechanism involves some tension because of these springs here, so it might take some pressure to get these screws started on each of the 4 points. Off camera, I went ahead and got my screws started, so now I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on each screw in a cross pattern, little by little, until each of the screws bottom out. 1, 2, that's bottomed. That one's bottomed. Now they're all tight. Now we have to get the fan plugged in, and our motherboard manual says that the CPU fan header is just above the DIMM slots right there. And that's right here, this white one. This is CPU fan on the motherboard. Now that that's done, it's time to move on to the case. My case came with these accessory bags that have some cable ties for cable management, some rubber grommets for hard drive mounting, and various screws for mounting different things too. And if you remember, our motherboard came with this I/O shield, which we will want to install first before putting anything else into the case. With the main chamber open, I'm going to install my I/O shield into the back, right here where the motherboard will go. Be careful whenever you're installing this, because the metal can be kind of sharp, and if you apply too much force, you could actually bend it since it's fairly thin too. All you need to do is apply force on all of the edges, and then you'll hear some clicking, and that's how you know that it's fully in place. My specific case came with this little bit that is used to install these little standoffs for the motherboard. Depending on what case you have, these standoffs might already be installed on the case, but in my situation I needed to install all of them in the right positions. Refer to your manual to see where they go. I actually took that standoff off of its place so that I could show you what that looks like. And that's tight. My motherboard is a micro ATX board that needs 7 screws to fully install into the case, and I already read the case manual to see that these are the correct screws to use. Now I'm going to get my motherboard, holding it from the heatsink, position it into my case, and try my best to align it to the I/O shield and to all the screw points. It took a little bit of fiddling around, but I finally got it in place. Now time to screw it all in. This will actually be a lot easier if you have a magnetic screwdriver. Alright, last screw. Wrist tight, and it's done. Now that our motherboard is installed, next I'm going to put in the power supply. This specific case came with this weird bracket thing that the power supply mounts to first, and then goes to the back of the case. With every other system that I built though, the power supply mounted directly to the back of the case. I don't know why this is doing this, but I'm just gonna go with it. This is one of those situations where I wish I had a third arm. Alright, now that I have this bracket thing installed, I'm going to put the fan facing downward and position this into the case. Now we're at the back of the case, and I'm going to secure that bracket with these 4 screws on these 4 points right here. Wrist tight, and that's done. Now I think I'm going to install the graphics card, but before I do that I need to remove this little other bracket thing so that I can install the expansion slots in the back of my case. Your case might have a different sort of mechanism for this, but mine is just lifting up and pulling back. We also need to take off a couple of these covers, and I already went ahead and test fitted my GPU, and it looks like it's going to be these 2 for me. My case is a little bit cheaper, so these ones are actually the breakable, disposable ones. I just need to apply force, break it off, and sort of wiggle it, and then it'll just come out. My graphics card has a back plate on it, so I can just touch whatever part I want. But if yours doesn't, you have to be careful not to touch any of the traces that you might be able to see through those holes. I'm going to line up this PCI Express connection onto that first top slot right here, and make sure that this is open before you do that, or else it's not going in. I got my slot pretty much lined up now, so I'm gonna press down until I hear that click. I went ahead and grabbed a couple more screws so that I can secure the GPU to the back of the case right here and right here. But first I have to put this bracket back on. And that's done. If you're keeping track, we now have 6 of the 7 parts incorporated into this build so far. The last one we need is the storage. This is actually going to be mounted on the other side of the case, so I'm going to take off this panel now. I see a couple of different places where the SSD can go, but before we put it in, we have to prepare it for mounting. My case manual specified that I need 4 of these specific screws and 4 of these rubber things to secure onto the SSD and then mount onto the case. I have the screws inserted into the rubber spacers, so now I'm going to screw them onto these 4 mounting holes on each corner of the back of the SSD. It might look weird, but trust me, it'll make sense whenever you put it on the case. I could either mount it into the top or into the bottom with these 4 little holes right here. I'm going to do it on the top. The rubber spacers are going to be fitting through these larger holes on the right side on all 4 corners, and then once those are in, you'll slide it to the left and that'll lock it into place. And after doing that, that's not going anywhere. So the good news is that everything is now installed and in the case. The bad news is that we still have to wire everything up, and this is probably going to be the longest part of the build process. First, I'm going to grab all of these cables that are pre-attached to the power supply and fit them through that hole right there, the big one, to the back of the case. Okay, now we're at the back. This really big cable is the 24-pin cable that goes to the motherboard. I'm going to route this back through to the front and then secure that to the motherboard on the other side. Alright, now we're back at the front. I laid my case down flat onto the floor so that this is easier to clip in. This cable has a little clip on one side, and you'll notice the slot on the motherboard right here has a little lip on the end, and that lets you know that that's the correct orientation to socket this in. So I'm going to align it and clip it down until I hear a click. Don't be too afraid to apply a lot of force here. The motherboard can bend without breaking. It was a pretty faint click that I heard, and I did use quite a bit of force, but now that cable is secured. I ended up removing my top fans for this next step because it was interfering with the CPU power cable that I'm going to be routing to the front now. So I'm going to grab this cable, move it over to the top corner through this little hole, and then hopefully make it through the, oh, I just did it, to the front of the case. Alright, so we're back at the front again, and like the other cable, this cable has another set of clips that secures it to this socket right here, and I'm going to align it and press it down until I hear a click again. After some fiddling around, I finally got it in. Now we're at the back again, and this cable here is actually the power that goes to our SSD. This connector has an L shape on it that prevents you from plugging it in the wrong way. And there it is installed. The last thing that we need to supply power to is the graphics card. You'll notice that all of our cables that are coming out of the power supply are already being used, but there's these little slots here because this is a semi-modular power supply. What that means is that you're able to attach or detach the extra cables that you need or don't need in order to make cable management a lot more tidy. So I plugged in that PCI Express power cable into the correct slot, routed it out the back, up through this hole, and now to the front for a little bit tidier cable management. And now our graphics card has some power to it. I guess now's a good time to get my fans back on the top. Okay, now those are back on. Now that everything has power, the last thing I gotta do is work on the fans and the front I/O cables. I originally had this front I/O thing mounted on the top of the case, and it came with it on this side. I might need to move it back because these cables are not that long and I want to be able to route this cleanly. Ah man, I just noticed that I've been sliding this thing around too much and now the bottom filter is a little busted. Well, I'll just clean out the power supply more often and just ditch this. So off camera I went ahead and moved that from that position to this position, and I also got the USB 3.0 cable, routed it through the back, through that hole, back around the front through this hole, and now it's in its actual spot. Refer to your motherboard manual to see where all these cables go on your motherboard. Alright, now I have the front panel audio cable and I'm going to do the same thing, route it through the back, back through the front, and then put it to its actual spot somewhere down in there. I actually decided to remove my graphics card so that this is much easier to do. Okay, now my front audio is in, USB 3 is in. The last ones I need to install are these really annoying cables for the power switch, the power LED, hard drive activity, and the reset switch. I'm actually really glad now that I decided to take out the graphics card for this. I needed to use a flashlight for this, but there they all are installed. There's like little labels on the bottom of the header that let me know which ones go into which spots. When it comes to the switches like power and reset, positive and negative do not matter, but for the LEDs, positive and negative do matter. So make sure that you get those in the right positions for the lights to work. And now I got my graphics card back into place. The last thing I gotta do is connect all of my fans to the motherboard and to clean up all the messy cables that I have in the back of the case. Now I have it plugged in and it is leading out towards the back through that small hole. Now at the back, here are my 3 fan cables, 1, 2, 3. And those are my splitter headers, so I'm going to plug one of my 120s into one of the headers, the other 120 into the other header of the splitter, and then the 140 is going to plug into the extender of one of the 120s. Now after plugging all of those in, I have them all tucked nice and tidy into this little lip, out of sight and out of mind. Honestly, I don't think this needs to be cleaned up any more than it already looks. It's not really worth it to put any more cable ties or anything to secure them. Since there's so much cable management space back here, the panel's going to close just fine, so I think I am finally done. Alright, now I got the panels back on, dust filters are back on. All I have to do is take it to my desk, plug in the power cable, plug in all my peripherals, and see if it actually turns on. But first, make sure your power supply is turned on. So while I was carrying it to my desk, I realized I forgot to plug in the SATA data cable that goes from the motherboard to my hard drive so that it can communicate with everything else. That's better. Okay, I have everything plugged in, my power, my display, my peripherals, and my Wi-Fi. Monitor's on, everything's on. I'm kind of scared because I did not test this before I started assembling everything, which I should do. It's a better practice to do that to see if there's any dead parts, but I was too eager to get this build done. 3, 2, 1. We got lights. We got fans spinning. Let's see if we get a display. Oh yeah. We are up and running. Since we have no operating system installed on this is the message that we're getting, but everything is working for sure. If it wasn't working, I would have a blank screen and a really sad feeling in my heart. If you'd like to see me make a tutorial about installing operating systems on newly built computers, feel free to leave a comment down below. Thanks for watching this tutorial. Keep following Studio 128 and Wilcox Theater and Arts for more content, and we'll see you next time. Glad that's done. Oh.
The theater is super important to our community because it brings all sorts of people to the area. It's kind of a meeting place for all people of all ages. One thing I really like about the theater is that not only movies bring people together, but they have projects and different programs for older people, younger people, everybody in between. So it really does encompass the community and all sectors of the community. There's something for everybody.
It's time to wind down this little telethon that we've been having here today. Lots of people to thank that made this happen. But first of all, our fundraising totals right now have crossed over $3,000. So we're really excited about that. That's not really the final total because you can still donate online until midnight tonight, and it will count as part of the Arizona Gives Day donations. And if you want to drive by and come down here, we will be here till 7:30 tonight because we're going to show a movie. And the kids that are here, the staff that's here will accept those donations again until about 7:30. So we're not really quite to the end of our total donation amounts, but you know, we're going to be really, really close to what we did last year. So there's lots of thank yous. First of all, I want to thank all of our financial supporters that have given some of their hard-earned cash to help the theater keep things moving and programs coming. We know that there's all kinds of choices out there and all kinds of need, and so we appreciate your support of this particular organization. I'd like to thank the volunteers. We've had 5 different volunteers that have run the phone bank, and I think they're still talking to people and calling people, so I want to thank them. I want to thank some of the other people that are here today. One, Patina, she was here earlier today as our co-hostess, so I want to thank her for doing that. I want to thank Peter. He was here today. He put together all the videos. He ran the soundboard. He had the earphones on. He's the one that said, 1, 2, 3, time to go. So we appreciate, Peter, all your hard work. Brandon, you were here and you handled all the walk-in traffic. So we appreciate that. It takes lots of people to make even this little small telethon go forward. I want to leave you with this. The WTA, Wilcox Theater and Arts, has programming that reaches over 15,000 people here in the Wilcox area. That's kids of all ages from 5 years old to about 85 years old. So there's lots of people that are receiving benefits and enjoying some of the programming that's been going on. 15,000 people is a lot of people to be involved with the theater. So in the final thought, this is a historic theater with modern experiences and modern programming. So with that, thank you everybody for being a part of this, and we will probably see you next year on Arizona Gives Day. Thank you, and have a good evening.